Today, we're going to cover a subject that has been requested a few times, and that's called mark training. Now, the reason why we want to cover mark training is because there are an incredible amount of benefits to teach the dog the mark. Now, there's a couple of their names for mark training, one of them being place, bed manners, things like that. They just look slightly different, but the overall term for mark training, bed manners, and place is actually boundary training. So boundary training is kind of like the general terminology of what the mark does and what a bed does or what a place does. But it gives a dog a guideline where they can rest their energy and feel safe. And with dogs that have a tremendous amount of energy, you won't have that. A lot of the dogs that we have in our care right now, I don't think there's any of our dogs have that much energy in this particular Zoom call. But when you have dogs that have a tremendous amount of energy, they get so fixated on working and doing things that unless you actually teach them bed manners or mark or any kind of boundary training, they actually don't rest very much. So then the problem with not resting effectively is that, I mean, if you go many days without sleeping properly, how do you feel? How are your emotions? You tend to be triggered a lot more of the time, and you tend to be able to create a lot less value in everything you do. And you're irritable, and a lot of the your ability to process information is diminished. So those are some of the consequences of not being able to rest properly. So again, if I have a dog like Megan, I think Mabel would be one of the dogs that would be a tiny little bit more energetic than some of the dogs here. So like when you teach mark training and when you teach boundary training, is remarkable the changes that you see in an animal. And this goes for horses, this goes for cats, birds, you name it. It's really an amazing tool to have. So let's define boundary training a little bit. So boundary training involves focus, proximity. Like Vision has a lot of energy right now. So that's a great way to train that energy. So focus, proximity. It also teaches emotional control, emotionally stability, being able to go from one salt level to another. So it gives you like a dimmer switch where you can get the salt levels up and bring them back down. So it makes you feel really important and influential in your dog's eyes. It also helps with flexibility. What I mean with flexibility is being able to change your mind and like listen more to what people are instructing you to do. It also helps with grit, problem solving. So all of those bricks, every single one of those bricks, and a couple more than I haven't mentioned, confidence, all of those things are built with boundaries. So it is absolutely one of my favorite things to teach. And so I'm going to go over two versions today. So the first version is going to be a version that you will use for a dog that has insecurity. And when you have a dog that has insecurity or reactivity, you want to use mark training, because mark training means you're going to put two front paws up on something and you're going to lift up your chest and your head really high, and you're going to feel very proud of yourself. So that's basically the position. Now, just as a reminder, dogs cannot lie. They're not people. There's a huge difference between a dog and a human in regards to how our consciousness work. Like I can tell you I'm happy, but like my mom passed away or my dog passed away and I'm feeling really sad inside, but I'm not going to tell you because I may not necessarily want to share it. So that technically is lying. And if you're very good at reading human body language, you will be able to pick up on that. But dogs cannot lie. So dogs cannot feel happy and have a body language that is not happy. It's impossible. They actually can't do that. right? So what happens when you have an insecure dog or a dog that is reactive and you put them on the mark? Okay, again, the mark means 2 front paws on top of something high. The height has to be about that high for a beginner, higher, even easier for a beginner. Okay, but it means 2 front paws on something and then chest up and look up. So when I give my treat, I'm giving my treat like there. So my neck has to stretch up. And if you ever seen any movies or had seen any magazines about dogs in conformation, they stretch their neck out, and that position gives them pride and gorgeousness, and that's kind of like the energy we're gonna bring out of our dog when we're doing mark training. So that's the first thing that you have to understand. The reason why mark training is so effective for reactive dogs and insecure dogs is you're actually changing the body dynamic. So when you change the body dynamic of an animal, there's a new emotion that can be created. So when you are working to bring your dog on a mark, you always want to start with luring. And you always want to start by desensitizing the dog to a mark. So a dog that has insecurities or reactivity may not actually be comfortable putting their paws up on something. So you actually have to lure them, and if they hit the mark, you say yes. And if they sniff the mark, you say yes. And you basically reward anytime the dog moves close to the mark, near the mark, anything like that. Okay, and I'm constantly giving value for having curiosity near the mark. And then after that, then I can ask for more. I can point at the mark. I can try to get the dog up on it, try to do that. And then I'm going to pay more repetitively for being brave until my dog can get up on the mark. Okay, so that will be this first step. I want to get on the mark. So then the next step is adding duration to that. So, okay, it's great that you can get on the mark, but now I actually need you to stay on the mark and actually hold that position for a little bit of time, and then get multiple rewards for holding that position. So that is called what, you guys? Yes, Anitra, you got it. Except I can't hear you. Can you mute yourself? Layering. Perfect,
Yeah.
Anne.
Yeah, it's layering.
Yeah, so that's called
Thank you.
layering, right? So we're adding the duration layer to the beginning of an understanding of a behavior. And the easiest layer to actually add on a mark or a place or a bed is actually duration. That's the easiest thing, because I'm basically next to the dog does it, they go on the mark, and I just treat, and then stop, treat, stop, treat, stop, treat. And so you can add the duration, and it works really well. Oh, hello, Vision. Wow, she's so huge. She looks massive. And then, so that's the first one. Now, does anybody have an idea what would be the next layer that we can add after duration?
Distance.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So distance. So I would start by, now there's another thing that I forgot to mention about the mark specifically, and any kind of boundary training, is that it really solidifies your ability to have leash skills, because the mark or a boundary uses every single leash skill that that you can actually use when you're actually working in real life situations. Not if you're working in a specific thing, like for example, nose work, because you hold the leash really high here, but in a specific situations like outside real world applications, your mark and your bed manners will actually completely solidify any leash problems that you have. They will completely get fixed. So again, the idea is that I'm gonna slide on my leash. If my dog tries to move out of the bed, I'm just gonna gently slide. And when my dog tries to get off the mark or off the bed, then I'm gonna provide a reward. I'm gonna create that value. Now, also, every time you leave your dog on the mark, every time you leave your dog from the bed, you actually gonna slide off the leash and slide back and reward, even if they didn't do a mistake. So what ends up happening is you end up really, really learning how your body feels and how your body can move around your dog. And the greatest thing is that your dog is stationary. So you actually are learning how not to be clumsy. So it's really, really cool to do. What we're gonna do is we're actually gonna follow up this Zoom class with a small video of those leash skills. So you'll have that in the next couple of days or tonight on Facebook, on the Facebook group. So you can just review those leash skills. Okay, so that's the next step. So I'm gonna add distance. So now guess what? You have energy, and guess what? You can put that energy on something and you can feel secure about yourself. And I can give you value for that security. And I can make you even look more pretty and feel happy about a situation. And now you can hold that position for a long time. So that means that there could be things happening around us and you are able to hold that position. Now, guess what? You can also be comfortable and confident even without me, because I can actually move away from you. But don't worry, I can support you because I can come back to you whenever you need me. So this is like the conversation that you're having when you're actually working with the mark. And so it brings a tremendous amount of confidence, a tremendous amount of trust, a tremendous amount of respect for you, and the relationship between you and your dog really, really get strengthened. It's such a beautiful exercise. It's such a wonderful way to actually communicate with your dog. So then after I did duration and I did distance, what's next? What layer can we add, you guys?
Distractions.
Pardon me?
Distractions.
Perfect, distractions. So then when I'm adding distractions, that's a tough thing. So instead of me adding distance and duration at that point, I'm actually gonna get closer again to my dog and I'm gonna start right next to my dog. So the distractions could be that instead of practicing in your living room or in your garage, I'm actually gonna practice on the sidewalk. I'm gonna bring my mark out, and on the side of my house, even if there's not too busy, I'm gonna start practicing. That is a distraction. It's a change of location, right? So now I'm building that relationship again and going through duration and distance with my dog in that particular new environment. And so again, another opportunity for me to create that confidence, that gratitude that your dog is gonna feel, because you're giving your dog the ability to know what to do in different circumstances. And so if I had a dog that has, for example, an issue that loves to greet people all the time, he just wants to say hi to everybody, he's like a social butterfly, I would be doing my mark training where there's people and my dog is not allowed to say hi to people. He has to hold that. If my dog is the opposite, he doesn't want to say hi to people. He never wanted to touch people. He feels insecure about people. He feels like nervous, aggressive, like anything. I will be doing mark training near people. Because whether you are intense in a good way or intense in a negative way, this teaches the ability to have self-control. And if you understand body language and you understand how to use pacifying signals, not only can you do mark training and bring confidence, but at the same time, you can actually teach your dog how to use pacifying signals when they feel stressed out. So like a head turn. So my dog is like on the mark and I can see that my dog is getting nervous and he's gonna try to get off the mark. I can actually tell my dog, good job, baby, head turn. And then do a head turn, and then my dog does it, and all of a sudden my dog is happy-go-lucky again on the mark, and he forgot completely that he was feeling nervous. So then the dog starts learning, if I feel nervous and I do a head turn, I feel better. Maybe I should do head turns at other times, like every time I feel this feeling. Okay, so I had a question. Let's see, let me check. Any suggestion how to get 2 paws versus jumping up? Also is the command mark. Okay, yes. The mark, the way to get only 2 paws is by making sure that the mark is small enough to only fit 2 paws. Okay, and the command is mark, but that's only my particular command. That doesn't mean that the entire world uses that command. So, but I do say mark. I actually say mark. And I will never introduce the command until my dog consecutively goes to the mark without a bribe 9 out of 10 times, and my dog is happily touching it and getting on the position. Then I say mark, 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 mark. And some dogs will pick it up faster than others, right? So I may have to learn quite a bit of time. Like I'm working with a poodle right now. She's lovely. Her name is Zoe. It actually took us a lot longer to say the mark command because she will come to the mark and look at it, twist her head, put one paw on it. I would say yes. I would give her a treat. Then she would look at it, turn her head, put a little bit, take the paw off, and she was just doing all these things that weren't exactly. I'm going on the mark, putting my paws up. So I actually couldn't say mark until she did that. Right? I have to capture that moment. That's what mark means. It means 2 front paws on top of something. Only 2 front paws. Okay, if it's not 2 front paws, it's not a mark, it's an up. So like you may want to use a stool, like you can even use something like this. This is a box, right? A box is actually solid. It has things inside, so it won't fall. And that would be, I mean, if your dog puts 4 paws on this, I'm impressed. Okay, so like it's not big enough to fit the back legs, right?
Can you sort of go over what the sort of approach would look like? Because I know Vision has done it in the past.
Can you say that again? Sorry, it's hard to hear you, Mike.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
A little bit better, but you have to speak loud. Your volume is a little low.
Can you hear me now?
Oh yeah, that's much better.
Okay. Can you sort of help us visualize or help me visualize what it would look like bringing Vision towards the mark and to initially get those 2 paws going up versus, kicking it or scratching at it? Because I know that Vision definitely can do it, but it's more about what is my body language to initially get.
100%. And I think that I wouldn't be the best person to help you with that. I think we can let other people assist you with that. Okay, Megan, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, Megan, do you mind sharing how he can do that?
Getting the pop up. So
yeah,
with
like the very beginning.
Yeah, we had her on a leash, and then it was like just luring her over the mark, like luring the tree over the mark. She would sort of follow it, and then just as soon as she lands 2 feet on it, it was just yes.
Yeah, and if she's having a really hard time, you can actually reward for even hitting it. Because like with Zoe, okay, she was so insecure. She's such an insecure pup that as I walked to the mark with the lure, she was like, there's no way this is gonna eat me. Mm-hmm. Like she literally was like, oh my God, I'm gonna die. Like I can't possibly come close to that. So what ended up happening is I actually would lure her, and if she even moved her head a little bit towards the mark, I would say yes. I couldn't even reward for like approaching it. Right? And Anne had that experience too when she started with her little girl, because she was also terrified. So you may have to break it down to really steps. And if she hits it with 1 paw, kicks it, that may be a good beginning. You can always shape it better after. How do you shape it better? Like when she's hitting it all the time, stop rewarding for that and ask for something else. So if you hold the treat there and she's hitting it and is not getting something, she may put her paw on it. And then you reward for that one. That's called successive approximations, and it's an actual training technique. Now, no behavior is possible without a lure. Okay, luring is your foundation, is like your ABCs in the dog world. Luring means treat on the nose, not here, actually on the nose, and move the dog around like that. That's actually what it means.
Yeah.
Okay. So that is the basics of it. Okay.
I think it was Annalise that Mabel how to mark first.
That's
and
right.
it was just like, just imagine you have your mark and then it was like a lure over the stool. Or
So just so you're aware, Annalise, a little kid,
Mhm.
and I noticed. So I was working with Mabel. She came for training, and I was just with her. And then there was a child, and Mabel was acting kind of weird with the kid. So then what I did is when Megan came for class, I asked Annalie to come with a kid, and I gave the leash to Annalie and said, "You train Mabel on the mark." And Megan and I just sat down chatting while Annalie was doing all the work, and with Mabel. So and that worked really well. I mean, it took her a few times, but eventually she did the mark, right, in within like a few minutes, right? And Annalie had all the hands, kids, they do things not as great as humans, I mean as adults, because they're learning their skills, right? So she's learning how to manipulate her body, at the same time how to hold the leash, how to hold the treat, and she's pretty good. But it's and then still Mabel was able to pick it up, right? So that's really good. So that is the idea of that. Now, the next important concept, now, if you were working on a bed manners instead of mark, bed manners means, I call bed manners with the intention of my dog is able to go to its bed, have 4 feet on it, be relaxed, no matter what the distractions are around them. And I can either say go bed, come bed, or just bed. Those are my 3 commands for bed manners. So, and my dog has to be able to perform all of those. But the difference between mark and bed is that the dog is actually raised. The bed will always be raised a little bit, and the dog has to have its full body on the bed, right? So that's the difference between the mark and the bed. Now, the bed doesn't create a sense of pride and confidence. It actually does a little bit of the opposite. It creates relaxation and subdued. So like a more submissive energy, a more calm energy than the mark. So, and that I really, really like for dogs that are very explosive. Like Quattro, I mean, a huge benefit doing bed manners, huge benefit, more than Mark. Okay, a lot more, because he tends to, sometimes when he gets insecure, it's an explosion, blah, blah, right? So like the bed is like bringing all the energy down. And the cool thing about bed manners is that you're gonna start the same way as the Mark. So you bring the treat to the bed. And at the beginning, I mean, now we have fancy beds at our center that, are actually quite expensive. But before, I used to just make platforms with wood, put a little lip on them, and then put the bed on top, right? Like about that high of the ground, right? And that's what I used to do. She's learning, guys. She's learning. Patience. There we go. Yes. Okay. So that is really important, that even if you don't have a big budget to build, like to actually get an expensive bed, you can always build it and put a blanket on top. Okay. And I'm gonna try to get out, you guys, so we can have our class. Hold on, I'm gonna see if I can go into a different room. Okay, this may be a little bit better. I'm gonna go over here. Oh, okay, one second. Maybe shoes. Yeah. Okay, I think she's a little calmer, so I can hear you guys. All right. Okay, so that's for the bed. Now, there's another amazing thing about the bed manners that you can't really do as well on the Mark, and that is the concept of stillness. So once you're beginning, the dog can go on the bed when you say bed. The next thing would be to add duration, right? That's our first layer. But now within this idea of adding duration to the bed, we can actually also add another concept, which is the concept of a stillness. So not only do you get to stay on the bed, but if you're very still, I'm gonna pay for that. I'm gonna pay you for being calm and utterly relaxed and not moving. So for dogs like Quattro, for dogs like Mabel, for dogs like Vision right now, and then and even Blue, if the dog has a lot of energy and they always kind of want to go, teaching that level of calmness gets that extra amazing capacity for the dog to actually have self-control in other aspects of their life. Right? So my dog is on the bed, they're like laying on the bed, they're holding it, and all of a sudden they stop moving. Treat really slowly on the bed. Treat really slowly on the bed. And then they can eat it. Right? So taking that time to put that ninja treat really slow, that could have a tremendous amount of benefit. Right? And so yeah. Right?
Question about the release off the bed.
I haven't talked about that yet.
Okay.
I will cover that in a minute. Okay. So that's that level of like, I'm gonna create, not only am I gonna create the relaxation by going on the bed, but now I'm also gonna create a stillness. Now for us, you guys, like if you really think about the value of a stillness, okay, I want you to tell me, honestly speaking, when you're interacting in real life with other people, what person do you ever talk to that will actually stop, give you their full attention, and be still so they can understand what you're saying? There is very little people that actually have that skill. But from my mentors, what I have learned is that actually gives elegance to a person. It gives professionalism. So if you actually are able to practice a stillness in your life, that teacher that you're talking to, that like whoever you're looking information for, they're actually gonna feel that energy coming through, and they're gonna wanna help you 10 times more. It's a sign of actual care. So when you really look at that, the value, it's a huge lesson to learn. And it's actually no different in your dog. Your dog will be able to give 10 times more to you if they actually have the capacity of a stillness. So just like I'm saying, I honestly, from all the tricks in the world, from all the like things that you can potentially train your dog, I love boundaries. There is so many ripple effects that boundaries create, whether you do mark training or bed manners. It really is an incredible tool to use with a dog. It creates an incredible bond. And there's so much we can learn from our dogs, so much. Because, you know, when you love your dog because they give you that, indescribable attention. Imagine you being able to give that to another person. How much value can you give? And how much value do you receive? It's just so amazing to practice something like that. So amazing. Okay, next part of, so the next part of this, okay, is the release. So the release is something that should be very energetic because we ask the dog to do the opposite before. So what happened is we ask the dog to show calmness, to show like integrity, to show the ability to have self-control. So if we want to create value for that, our release could be proximity, the proximity game where you toss the treat, okay, and they come back. It could be engagement 1 where they chase you, but it should be something that allows that energy to go boom because they contained it. Okay, and then what ends up happening is that if you are actually doing that, your dog actually wants to come back to the bed, come back to the mark. They actually naturally come back and they do it. Like my dog, every time he sees a mark, he's on the mark. He's like, did I get something? right? And actually you build that necessity to go back with the release, because the release is, they see the release as value that you created for the behavior of the mark or the bed. So that is super interesting. Now, the next magic, okay, this is what people don't do. But the next magic of this particular behavior is that you actually can bring your mark and your bed anywhere you go. So whereas at the beginning, your mark is actually quite large, like my mark is raised this high, at the end of the day, with my particular dog, I can throw my cell phone or I can put my cell phone down and ask my dog to mark on this. I can ask my dog to mark on a toonie. You actually can go from a big mark to a smaller mark, and your dog will have the exact same emotional control, feedback, feelings, all that kind of stuff. You understand? So that's the magic. So like, for example, with Zoe, okay, Zoe's issue is people, really. She really doesn't like people that much. She feels secure within the people that she feels comfortable with. But if a person comes, she's like, woo! Like this, like kind of alert barking, from 0 to 100, you know? So I've been using mark training with her when people come and pick up all their dogs. It's chaos during pickup time because there's lots of dogs, there's lots of people, and so it's like, right? And she's getting rewards for that, and she's a poodle, so she looks super dainty and super proud of herself, just absolutely adorable. So like that's the next step. Once you get to a point where you have layered your mark or your bed with duration, and then with distance, and then with distractions, is actually taking your mark to places where you can increase what? Where are we increasing at this point, you guys? So we have, huh? What?
Distance.
No, together. So
Distraction.
duration, distance, distractions, what are we doing? The last D. Yeah, difficulty. Exactly, difficulty. So that's when you actually create a powerful relationship with your dog. You know, the way you bond with people is not really by just chatting at a grocery store. Like that could work, but if you were to go on a trip with somebody and both of you are completely 100% uncomfortable and you live through that together, that is a bond. You'll never forget that. Hey, you remember that day when we went camping and the bee stung me and blah, blah, blah? Yes, I remember that. I can't believe it. You know, that is bonding. So when you put your dog in a situation, again, that goes back to what we're talking about last week, about taking ourselves and our dog out of kilter and being able to create value. That's where your bond strengthens. Okay? That's doing like the things that are hard, facing your fears, actually looking at them and saying, I choose to not live in fear. I choose to look at it and work through it. It's actually how you grow and how you create a bond. So so again, like I'm telling you, like mark training and boundary training, the most beautiful thing. Especially if you go through life, continue to using it. Like, for example, Senchin the other day, I took him to the city. He hasn't been in the city for a while, so he was really, really excited about everything. He was sniffing a lot. He wasn't paying attention to me. He was more interested in looking at the balloons, looking at the people, looking at the dogs, and he really was having a hard time on me. And as soon as I put him on the mark, he goes like, oh yeah, there you are. Like automatically. He's like 100% focused on me. So then I had to do that for a few times. So I would go and I will find marks on the road. Like there's a rock here. There's like a sidewalk here. And I would put him on those things. and like his intensity went down, and then we walked down the street and he was on me the entire time. Right? So again, it's like I can't say a dog is gonna be perfect all the time. It really depends on how much you work them. Sentience had a very lazy winter, right? And now he's like getting back into work, so he needs a couple of refreshers, right? Just like we do, right? But he hasn't forgotten any of his training. He just needs to be refreshed on what the actual scripts are. And like, you remember this script? And he goes, oh yeah, I got that. Right? So things like that. So like, if you continue to just mark training on a regular basis, like let's say, for example, that you're gonna have something broke in your house, okay? And you're gonna have somebody come and fix it. And you know your dog is not very secure about themselves. Well, guess what? That's a perfect opportunity to practice 5 minutes, 2 minutes, mark training, right? And then once you succeeded a little bit, you can put your dog away, so your dog doesn't have to worry, right? And then you can keep working through that. Yeah, do you guys have any questions about what we talked about so far?
Is it important to differentiate with the...
Mike, we can't hear you.
All right, my headset's dying today. So is it there's bed and there's sleeping on your bed, and so the bed manners is different, but for the release, is there a so Vision is really good at going to her bed. What I'm struggling with is getting her to stay at the bed. So this will help. But is there anything I need to do that's different between her just sleeping and taking herself to the bed and leaving that bed?
No, when Sentient goes to his bed, he just chooses to go to his bed and sleeps. I'm not giving him a command.
Yeah.
So that doesn't matter.
Okay.
Like, and I will never give a dog a command at nighttime to go to their bed, because if they break, they learn to break. So that makes no sense. And Sentient half the time is half on his bed, half on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, that's, he's like upside down and things. So it's not, I don't want to give a command then.
Yeah. So only give a command when you can give the release is what you're kind of saying.
Yeah, and when you can be there to help them out. Yes. Anitra, you had a question?
Yes, a little while ago, you were talking about distractions and taking the dog outdoors and getting him or her on the mark, and then looking for pacifying signals, the head turn. And then you said head turn as a command, and I was just wondering, is it the passive or the, I know that some of the pacifying signals are natural, but are they also?
They weren't. For Quattro, for Quattro, they weren't natural. He wasn't doing any of them when we started training. So something that we may have. So what happened is actually we taught them to him, and that's called manufacturing a pacifying signal. So manufacturing, like for example, with that little dog that's barking right now, what they're doing is they're manufacturing a head turn by trying to lure her to do a head turn, by trying to get her to actually put her head down. There's different pacifying signals, but we're trying to actually manufacture it and then give enough value to those, so then the dog chooses to do it on their own. So by the time I told you, look for pacifying signals, that was because I knew that Quattro already understood what those were. So now you are at a point where you can wait for them and then reward for them instead of you causing them.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So that's like the difference. So I want to manufacture them instead of like, if my dog doesn't know them, I'm going to actually help my dog do them. How do you help your dog do them? With luring. Right? And then you say the word as you're doing it. Head turn. Head down. Okay, sniff. You know, things like that. There's another one, bow stand. You can do that on a mark, but it's harder. Yeah, and there's a couple others. There's lots, there's so many. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so that's that particular thing. So let's review. The way we create stupendous dogs that can actually be of service for society, is by understanding that a wall of concepts have to be built, and this wall has bricks on it, and every brick is one concept, like confidence, grit, focus, proximity, engagement, prey drive, SOD levels up, flexibility, adaptability, like all these things. Every single brick is one concept. And the way the bricks go on the wall, the mortar, the glue that holds the bricks together, is actually you. You are the glue. And that glue is the way your dog trusts you and respects you, forms that glue. And the more influence you have with your dog, the more that glue solidifies every brick. And the more games that you know that make each concept a solid concept in the dog's brain, the more that you can take that concept outside and use it in daily life. Okay, so that is magic in the making. And at the same time, this is what's called a positive feedback loop. So the more that you can take that concept and apply it in daily life, the more that your dog sees you and influential, the more that your dog trusts you, the more that your dog respects you, the more that you create the mortar for the bricks. And then it keeps going. This is a positive feedback loop. And it keeps going like that. So one of the exercises that we love to practice, because it actually fortifies a tremendous amount of bricks, is boundary training. And boundary training has many shapes. There's many different ways to train boundary training. However, today we talked about two specifically. Mark training, who brings confidence up, pride, enthusiasm, elegance, presence, right? Confidence, all of that. And the other one is bed manners, which brings tranquility, trust, stillness, okay, things like that. And they both taught the same way. All of them have to be layered, okay, and then that builds up in using it during regular daily life. Do we understand that? Awesome. So now that we talked about the doggies, this is evolving the human-dog relationship. So we can grow our dogs, but if we don't grow ourselves, we're gonna be stuck in different points in our life. So how do you apply boundary trainings in a human way? How do you create an ability to become a better version of yourself by understanding boundaries? Really cool. What are boundaries? Boundaries are basically the things that you leave that you're not willing to dispose of. Principles, like for example, do what's best. Like, you know, are you gonna hit a dog? I'm not gonna hit a dog. I'm gonna help a dog feel better. Okay, so those are, I will never, that's a boundary that I will not cross. Okay, boundaries help you make decisions because it creates the principles in your head, the principles that you will have. For example, a principle that I decided to take on in my life right now is treat my body as my temple. So that means, Like, you know, when I was young, I didn't necessarily was aware of how important it is to actually take care of your body physically in a very specific way. And now that I'm a little bit older and I had some injuries from working with dogs and from running a lot and things like that, I finally recognized that a very important principle to live by is treat your body as your temple. And so now I have a very specific kind of like focus on really considering what that means in my daily life. And so that's a boundary. So now, like the other day, my friends were like, hey, let's go eat McDonald's. And I was like, that sounds great for you guys, but I made a commitment to myself. That's a boundary that I'm not willing to break right now. And that's a principle, that's a life principle. Right? So then I'm like, thank you, I'm okay, I'll go with you guys, I accompany you, I'm just not gonna eat it. Right? And I don't have to ask other people to adhere to my principles because that's not up to me. But my principles create the boundaries that actually help me live a better life. Another principle and another example of a boundary or a principle is be self-honest. So what that means is, like, for example, if you are going through something in your life that is difficult, you have to be self-honest. So that means that instead of hiding it and pretending that it's not there and watching TV and not looking at it and knowing that it's there kind of poking at you a little bit, and you're being dishonest because it's there, it's showing up in your life, but you're not willing to look at it. Instead, it's saying, I'm gonna have to look at it because it came up. So I have to be honest with myself. This particular point affected me. Why? You may be surprised at what you find out, right? But that's a principle, again, that creates boundaries. Another thing that, for example, I experienced throughout my life is that I given a lot of giving, lots of give, but I never actually look at who I was giving to. So what happened is sometimes there was moments where I accepted or I allowed other people to take advantage of me. But that doesn't fall on those people. It falls on my inability to look and perceive what's happening around me. Okay, so that is something I learned. So I learned how, and I remember the first time somebody told me, you may want to look at boundaries and having boundaries with people a little bit. I remember the first time I heard that, I was like, what is that? I had no idea how to say no, to the point where, like, if a client asked me to drop off the dog 3 hours away because they needed it, I couldn't say no. But that was actually a detriment to myself, my time, my everything else I had to do. But it was difficult for me to say, hey, that's not what's best right now. I'm not able to fulfill that at this moment in time. You understand? So that's a boundary. So in humans, boundaries are very powerful because it allows you to stand up for yourself and actually grow and be actually to give a little bit more because you have those boundaries. The next thing that we talked about is, like, for example, if you look at side by side with boundaries, also it comes with that stillness. And why is important stillness is because not only can you give a stillness to others by paying attention to them and actually be present in the moment with them, but you know what it means to give a stillness to yourself? To actually stop and look at yourself and stop and breathe and just be there. That is such a remarkable feeling. And honestly speaking, when was the last time you did that? When was the last time when you slow yourself and you gave yourself stillness? Life is so busy, especially when we're adults, right? So it is such a gift that you can give to yourself and to others as well. So that's the same. It's actually, if you look at the dog, it's actually the same. It just looks different because we have a different type of consciousness and we look different and we are creators instead of dogs that are full there, present always. You know what I mean? But it's actually the same gifts that we can give them with those exercises we're giving to ourselves. Does anybody have any questions about that?
Thank you.
Yeah, you're
Good
welcome.
reminders.
You can learn a lot from my dog. I sure have learned so much from my dog. You know, the first dog that I work with, that I actually professionally work with, every time I got angry, he bit me. Every time. So guess what I learned? Don't get angry. Breathe. And it was such an amazing lesson for me because I'm Mexican and Mexican people get dramatic and we make something this big. And so it really taught me a lot about being aware of who I was at any one time. And it was such an amazing experience. And that dog and I grew together for like forever. He died when he was 15. And until the last day of his life, he taught me things. Like, he passed away. I played tug of war with him for a few minutes. And then I say, go to your bed. He went to his bed. I went away to work with another dog. And when I came back, he had passed away on his bed with a smile from here to here. And he was gone. It was so beautiful. Right? It's like, I learned so much from that dog and I grew so much. Right? And again, like, I think that one of the most amazing things about having dogs is giving back. It is really giving back. You're walking on the street with your dog and people are already smiling at you. It's amazing what you can actually give with your dog, right? It doesn't matter if your dog is ugly, actually. I had a dog that had a broken jaw, no teeth, couldn't keep his tongue in, was all crooked, and people love him. Right? So it's just the dog, the magic of the dog is just fantastic. Okay, anybody have any other questions? No, we're good?
Thank you so much.
Awesome, you guys. Spread the word, share with people, tell them to join the group, invite others. Let's get bigger so we can help more people.
Awesome. I just had one question, Vali, about, I missed the first little bit about how high you start the mark training. Like, is it something you start really high, really low to start?
Not super high, but
Okay.
definitely high so the dog is uncomfortable. Like, you definitely have to put them in this position. Okay, like they have to stretch up. So it has to be about that much. So I would say a foot will be great. But I can actually measure my marks and get back to you because I use the dollar store marks and the marks from Walmart. Let me show you one. Hold on a second. All right, so I'll show you 3 versions. So this is like the Walmart one. This is from Walmart. So it's like nice and high, you see? It has a nice grippy top so the dog cannot slide, and it's actually quite heavy so the dog cannot tip it over. So that's like one version. Then after I do that one, I move to something a little bit more simple. So use like a bath stool or something like that. That's from like Canadian Tire or the dollar store. Right? Something like this. And then after something like that, I can use a brick. And I do put grippy material. So the dog has an easy time not sliding on the ground or like sliding their paws. So that's good. And then, and I keep going smaller and smaller. Right? And then, like, for example, I have a mark that I love playing with, cinching with, and it's just a piece of turf, like grass, fake grass from Home Depot that they were throwing out. And I love that because I can go outside, toss it in the air and say, Mark, and Senshin will put his front paws anywhere it falls. So it's kind of fun. So that's really cool. So again, the idea is that you start big and it should take you quite a bit of time to move to a small one. You shouldn't rush it because you're trying to create that feeling, that kind of presence in that particular item. So you want to practice over and over again. So the dog actually feels that way a lot. And so then once you move to a smaller, the feeling just comes, even if they're not raised. The feeling of pride, the feeling of confidence will come, right?